So what is energy? If we are energy, what is energy? We ought to know. Let's see. When I first started thinking about energy, what do you think about? I think about electric lines, a socket, right? Get energy. And there's so much more to energy. People used to call energy the vis-a-vis, meaning the living force. That's what we are. Without being electric, we would not be here. Which is another thing that maybe we ought to start out by thinking about, is that if we're living, then every cell in our body is moving, vibrating, right? Nothing is still or stagnant. Nothing. So think about that. I thought about that when Randall was talking about sacred geometry, and he said, what you have to do is figure out the point above you to figure out where you are. And I said, well, how can you do that? Because the point above you is always moving, and you're always moving, and the earth is always moving. And so, can we believe that we're synchronized? I don't think so. I think we're synchronized in ways, but I don't believe that everything vibrates in the same accord. How could it? With wind and sun and water. It couldn't, right? So is there ever a time when we can make a connection with something and be sure that we're connecting? I guess it depends on how big that something is, and perhaps quantum computers can calculate something like that. But I don't believe it. I don't believe so much of the foundational principles of science. And I'm going to share them with you, and you straighten me out, okay? So life, this vitality, right, is in a tiny cell. And the cell has an atom. And in that atom, there's energy. Now, when that cell got its energy, had to be the spark of conception, right? We know that when a sperm meets an egg and makes an impact or an implosion, that there's a spark. You can see it if you look, with a microscope. So we know there's a spark. So that spark had to set in motion the activity of those cells. And the cells had to already have a certain amount of information. Now, if the sperm penetrates this cell, then the egg, okay, and there's a spark and implosion, which creates life. So, in that instance, some of the DNA from the sperm are meeting the DNA of the egg, and they're combining to create a life, a human. And this human is energized through that initial spark, which affected everything in his body. So every cell is living, right? Now, if every cell is living, think about this. When we go to the doctor, they tell us we're biology, right? So if you have a bad appendix, you take it out. If you have a bad heart, you zap it, or you remove it and put a new one in, or you cut some cells out of it. Now, I understand that every organ in our body, including our skin and everything, replaces itself in cycles. And if you think like I do, that means that every so often the liver is going to be new. Unless we do something to it, we're going to get a new liver and a new everything, because we're cycling. Cells cycle. And so I was thinking this morning about looking at these leaves out here that are changing color. And if I move this, then I won't get it back. Changing color, and thinking, okay, is the color change an indication of a dwindling life? Maybe the energy in the life is starting to wane, like everything in a cycle. I remember I went to a psychiatrist one time, and they said, it sounds like your whole life works in cycles of 6 years. And when I thought about it, sure enough, I could track it. Everything is cycles. An egg is a cycle, a tree is a cycle, a leaf is a cycle, water is a cycle, a rock is a cycle. I just learned that rocks hold water, and they're constantly changing. Everything in this universe is in constant flux. Now, what does that say to us? What does that imply or mean? And what can we do with that? Right? So let's talk about that initial cell and that spark of energy which comes from the parents. What was the initial spark of energy? Where did that come from? We don't know. We know that there are different kinds of humanity. And I think the word evolution in a scientific sense means something so different than the evolution that they pawn off on us as Bible students. Same with, how we change over the years and adapt to our environment. There's so much more to that we need to understand than we do, but I don't want to get off on that. So it looks like energy is movement. And if energy is movement, it's internally generated. Right? If I want to move, I have to tell myself to move, unless I'm pushed by an outside force. So what has to happen for us to exert energy? Our cells are constantly exerting energy. But think about the creation of our experience. How does that happen? Well, it has to happen first with imagination, which has to be energy itself, doesn't it? And that kind of shows you why some people don't seem to have much of it and others have a lot. Because energy is like this. The more you use it, the more you get. And that is so very cool. When I was thinking about energy, I was thinking about swinging, because I love to swing. And how if I pump my legs, I can move myself forward. And at a certain point, I don't have to pump anymore, right? After I exert a certain amount of energy. And so that's almost like getting a 2-4. So you exert your energy, and what you get back is more. No matter what your focus is. What about our breath? Think about that. So if we're breathing in, that takes energy, and we're breathing out. If we breathe correctly, it takes energy until we get into the habit, and then it seems to do its own thing. And if we don't breathe right, it does its own thing too, which doesn't give us too great of a result. But if we're breathing and we're putting out into the world, or we're enunciating words, we have to see it first, and then we produce it. What about the energy of those words? They have energy. They can have dark energy or light energy. And we put them out. Are we responsible for what those words accomplish? And do they accomplish anything? And don't they have to accomplish something? If everything's vibrating, and I can show you how we have control over things like this. So the energy of words. Now, what if we were given a program or a book of words that weren't authentically correct? What if they were someone else's program to manipulate us? And we spent years and years focused on those words and that message, and we put it out. Like, if prayer is valuable and effective, then look at all the misvoiced prayers in the world. Just take a look at how many people have prayed for the big eye in the Middle East, and they don't even know what they're praying for or why. Just the book said to. Think about that power. And think about the collective energy of words. And what we're doing if we have the wrong words. Because the energy inside of us has power to create or destroy. Doesn't it? So energy is like work, really. It's work. It's the ability to produce, or and our energy produces the matter world that we live in. I know that's deep. And I'll take you there with me, because I had to climb down that hole. And it's a hole. So physical exertion has the ability to produce work. Just like that spark of life in our cells has the ability to create, to divide, to adapt, to affect, to, right? So one thing I'm seeing here is that what we're looking for doesn't come from the outside. It comes from the inside. And all my life I've taught, or most of my life I've taught leadership. And one of the things that was always so valuable to me was early on I learned the Latin definition of educate comes from the word educare, and that means to draw from within. And so our education was always meant to come from right in here, because we have it all. We just were told differently. We just had the wrong book. Okay. This is my necklace. It's important to me. I doubt it would be important to anybody else, but I'm going to hold it still, and then I'm going to ask it to come from me out, me out, me out. I just want my necklace to come from me and float out. Me out, like saying a yes to me. Thank you. And now, would you go around in a circle from right to left? Thank you. Did you see that? We have power through energy. We just have to learn to understand it. I have so much more. The energy in us should work the way the energy works in photosynthesis and in trees and in everything in nature. It knows what to do, unless you're sidetracked with a social agenda by rulers who don't want you to be all or to know all. You can. I'm going to stop it here and regroup, because there's so much info and it's all really good.